Hi, and welcome to a Westeros.org video on the political situation of Dorne in A Song of Ice and Fire. And I wonder what we might have an interest in that. But yes, what do you say?
Hi, it's me again. I am back to discuss Song of Ice and Fire material. As Linda explained, if you watch our reviews for like the last two episodes last season, the ninth episode I was pretty positive about. Actually, I was pretty happy with it, and then the tenth episode was like a knife to the heart. At that point I said I can't keep watching, and partly the time was it's a spoiler matter, but everyone said it's impossible. You'd have to live in a cavern out in Afghanistan, and I'm pretty sure even the Taliban know about the spoilers, to be honest. So
yeah, pretty sure.
So it's and the important thing for me about the books is, I'm feeling fairly confident that the novels it's all about the journey, it's about the circumstances, it's about the motivations. And I think in a lot of ways the show probably is going to be doing a lot of shortcuts and not really going to have the same circumstances. So that
some broad strokes are going to hit the same points and so on.
Yeah. So the reason I'm not watching the show is just it's too liable to disappoint me. I have a lot of problems with how they did things in that final episode, and I have the gist of what happened in these last episodes, and my opinion hasn't really changed. So I'll stick to discussing the novels, and in this episode, this video, we're going to be discussing Dorne. And obviously it's inspired because, stuff happens in Dorne, apparently, in the TV show. But we're going to discuss it in the novels and lay a framework for what the political situation is after Dance of Dragons. Note that this will include spoilers because we're going to be discussing... We never got around to doing it, so this might as well be our discussion of the two chapters from The Winds of Winter relevant to Dorne that George has released. One he put on his website, one he has read at several occasions. We're not going to go into in super detail about them, but we're just going to pick up what's happening in those chapters because they are important to understanding
where things might be going next, and very much not in the same direction as
we'll start with a recap of sort of the development of Dorne as a political entity throughout the first 5 novels. We'll deal with the first 3 novels as kind of one entity, right? And in the Game of Thrones, Dorne is really not a factor that's discussed a lot.
We know about Elio. We know that Prince Lewin was a member of Aerys' Kingsguard, and that they were involved in the fighting. But that's really it. This family tree is pretty sparse.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely quite sparse. So, and it's a Clash of Kings where Dorne finally really starts to make its presence known because Tyrion and the small council want the Dornish spears. Well, Tyrion wants them. Cersei's not so sure about them. And he makes that arrangement to betroth Myrcella to Trystane, who is the youngest of the sons of Dorne Martell. We hear about Dorne being cautious, sickly man, and he doesn't commit his forces as such. What happens is suddenly Dornish spears show up in the passes, and they have some impact in the fighting because it might have kept Renly from getting quite so many men as he otherwise would have had, because some of the Marcher Lords might have held onto more of their men to protect their lands while this whole War of the Five Kings was going on.
Mostly it has an impact on, I think, sort of the relationship between Tyrion and Cersei. The fact that he goes ahead and betroths Myrcella to Trystane and takes that step obviously influences their interactions a lot. So the impact is more on that personal level at this point.
Yeah, and also another thing, that deal wasn't just, Myrcella and Trystane marrying. It's a small council seat for Dorne and the promise of justice that the killers of Elio Martell and her children will be turned over or will meet justice. This is important for the third novel because the third novel is that's where we can get a real splash.
Yep.
Because Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, comes onto the scene with Velaria San and Daemon San.
They're expecting Doran, of course. That's the deal. Doran is supposed to, and it's not Doran that shows up.
It's Oberyn picking up that seat for his brother, and We learn also about this long-standing enmity between Highgarden and Dorne. Really Oberyn and the Tyrells, and it's like the elder Tyrells.
Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of bad blood between the Reach and Dorne, so it's not hard to have a conflict.
But there's a recent conflict.
There's a recent conflict in that Willis, the heir to Highgarden, ends up crippled in a tourney when he rides against Oberyn, and it appears to be a perfectly straightforward tourney mishap. Willis wasn't ready; he was pressured into it by his father. Willis has no problems with Oberyn. They're apparently exchanging letters about animal breeding.
So we have that, and he takes a small council seat, and we have, Tywin is kind of considering marrying Cersei off to him, and there's all this politics going on. But he's also discovered that Tywin is preparing to say, it's Amory Lorch who killed and raped Elia and killed the children, because conveniently Lorch is dead, and for whatever reason Tywin values Gregor enough for as being the monstrous warrior that he is.
Well, he might also value possibly not having Gregor suggest anything about any orders to.
Well, I mean, justice and justice. He could have just executed him. There's no reason to question him.
No, I suppose not. But
I mean, it's a kind of. The way it's presented in the book is Tywin. It's not really a loyalty from him towards Gregor.
No.
It's simply a pragmatic. This guy is worth too much. I'm willing to risk Dornish annoyance.
We'll blame this dead guy.
Yeah, it's easy. And of course, things come to a head when there's a trial for Tyrion, and Oberyn suggests, I'm your champion.
Tywin clearly had not expected that.
Nope, not expected. That was a surprise. But Oberyn has a way
Which is a bit odd. I mean, he should have known that Oberyn was completely unpredictable.
I think knowing that someone is unpredictable, and I mean, just because they're unpredictable doesn't mean you can then think, okay, what could he possibly do, and think of all the permutations. So
True.
I think, and also, I mean, Gregor is a fearsome, huge, monstrous warrior who seems almost impossible to beat. He might be unpredictable, but is he suicidal? Because that's from his perspective. Like, you'd have to be suicidal to take on Gregor, but
well, I mean, even Bronn considers it. If you,
maybe
if there was enough
big castles and
not what he's going to do with those castles when he's dead, but
I mean, he thinks there's a chance, but it's pretty slim.
Tywin has said he's pragmatic, so he figures that a pragmatic person wouldn't take that risk, I suppose.
I think
maybe
part of
he's
it.
Extending a little bit too much of his own pragmatism to how other people's reason.
Sure, well, we see that a lot actually sometimes, that he it's sort of like his view of Robb as this green boy, and forgetting the fact that he himself was this green boy who ended up defeating his father's enemies in the field and so on. He's a bit staid. He's a bit locked into his own pattern of thinking.
True.
Of course, we know how it ends with Oberyn. It doesn't go well. But before that, Oberyn is talking to Tyrion in that breakfast, which the TV show omitted, one of my annoyances, in which he tells Tyrion, your father might not live forever. And I know this has spawned all sorts of crazy theories. It's just Oberyn being Oberyn in my mind.
Yeah. And Tywin isn't going to live forever anyway. I mean, he's getting on.
There's no trees. I mean, there's no treason. Valar Morghulis, all men must die. There's nothing treasonous per se. But and he invites Tyrion to Dorne, and I think he refers, to Myrcella might be queen. So he's already thinking of. I think one element we did forget to mention some sources earlier on when Oberyn's introduced is he was trying to raise Dorne in rebellion against Robert. And then John Arryn.
There's Tyrion thinking when they realize that it is Oberyn coming in instead of Dorne, he goes through some of his exploits, which was, of course, the fact that after Elia's death, he had pretty much half of Dorne up in arms, and it took a fair bit to calm things down.
Exactly. So we have all this stuff here about Oberyn wanting to, not being happy with the regime and wanting to change, and definitely not liking the Lannisters. But he dies, and Tyrion, we know how it all goes.
Yeah.
But that leads us into a Feast for Crows. A Feast for Crows is the book where we get Dornish point of views for the first time. In this case, it's Arianne, and we also have Aris Oakheart briefly.
And they are, to some extent, responsible for a feast for crows in that Dorne is one of the two things that George cited. The reactions to Oberyn's death in Dorne were one of the reasons that he felt that the 5-year gap wouldn't work. The other one was Brienne. So the Dornish reactions are an integral part of the story, even though there aren't that many chapters.
Yeah, the big thing is obviously, as you know, when Doran gets the message about his brother's death, he knows what it is. I mean, the raven arrives and the letter arrives, and he doesn't read it. He waits till nightfall. He can't.
Best chapter so far in the books.
The opening of that chapter is wonderful. I've always said it. I'll stick by it. It's the most beautiful opening of any chapter in the books. You just feel the grief and the sadness and the melancholy of it so richly. But the Dornish people are calling for revenge. The small folk, which is one of the things we pointed out before when we discussed Dorne previously, but the small folk Dorne seems to have like a proto-nationalism, much as the North kind of has a proto-nationalism.
There's a bit in the North remembers kind of, and it's echoed in Dorne, but they kind of go more directly and to the spears.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not going to just go around remembering, we're going to kill people.
The other Sand Snakes, the Sand Snakes don't show up at all in the appendix of a Game of Thrones. I believe it's only with the Clash of Kings onward.
Not Ellaria either.
Ellaria, nor Ellaria. So Oberyn is there as the Red Viper, but his children aren't, and that seems to be something that George adds in with the Clash of Kings when he's starting to think more about the role
family dynamics
of Dorne.
Yeah.
The Elder Sand Snakes come. Obara wants to attack Old Town, and then from that cause a war so she can draw Tywin and dig through his guts for gold. Nymeria Sand approaches him and says, give me my sister Tyene, we'll go to King's Landing, we'll poison them, all of them. Tyene is, let's just crown Myrcella. That'll start a war, they'll come to us, and and his response is, he asks Arya, how loyal are my guards? And, all of them are good Dornishmen, and anyone has a problem with that can have a conversation with my axe. And he says, well, arrest the Sand Snakes, all of them, even the youngest, take Ellaria into custody, because people may try to use them against me. And that's where it ends up. As far as the Sand Snakes go, they end up in prison for the rest of the book, but which is interesting, obviously, that he's, obviously, in light of the TV show, there's look at how loyal are his guards, how loyal is Dorne.
There's obviously division. I think there are a lot of people. I don't. Well, there might even have been some people in Dorne who thought that Oberyn should be ruling instead of Doran, but those would be the crazier variety.
Yeah.
Since even the two of them, recognized that would have been a really bad idea. I don't think he was interested, and I think that mostly would have involved lots of people dying. But obviously they feel very strongly that they have, a reason to call for justice, that they feel put upon by, the rest of the Seven Kingdoms, in particular, obviously the Lannisters, and they had a long history of being independent from the rest of the Seven Kingdoms, from being at war with the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. Some of the absolutely bloodiest fighting in the history of Westeros has been between the Dornish and those regions that are closest to them, and then between the Dornish and the Targaryen as they tried to conquer them. And eventually they couldn't conquer them and hold them. They had to bring them in peacefully. So it doesn't take a lot to set them off.
I mean, the World of Ice and Fire was when George's material about the Aegon's early attempts to conquer Dorne was really eye-opening for us. We thought that the War of the Five Kings was brutal, and
I mean, this was so incredibly brutal and bloody and horrific in so many ways, and just the little notes there about every freaking castle in Dorne except Sunspear
got a taste of dragon fire.
Yeah, it's a bit of a slag heap, basically.
Then we get followed by with the Soul Knight. Eris Oakheart is finding out that he's been seduced by Orianne, and she convinces him that her father and her...
I mean, she uses the arrest of the Sand Snakes, like, he's gonna arrest me, he doesn't trust me.
He wants Quentyn to rule after me, Lord Ironwood hates me, because I'm a woman.
So she's playing up all these things. Some of them she believes, some of them she is exaggerating, I think, for ours.
He wants the damsel in distress. Yeah, he wants to.
Please rescue me. And
and she convinces him, let's crown Myrcella. She has a right to the throne after Joffrey, and it'll sort everything out. And she'll let you have me as your wife or what have you. And he goes along with it, and she has her band of companions. Her plan is basically the same as Tiny's plan. I mean, they're the closest. She's closest to her of the Sand Snakes. So they obviously discussed this and had a similar notion of starting this war by having Myrcella crowned. Unfortunately, somebody always tells, and her plan is revealed, and Aerys Oakheart dies at the axe of Areo Hotah. And she's taken prisoner to her father, and he keeps her locked up for a while and finally releases her to talk to her. And there, the big revelation, that final chapter,
the big revelation that Dorne really needed to attend some family counseling for one thing, to learn to talk to his daughter.
No, there's a lot of serious issues with and I've drawn a parallel between, Ned and Catelyn regarding Jon, and Doran and Arianne regarding, Doran's secrets. Both Ned and Dorne had secrets that they kept from women in their family, but really hurt those women. And he may have been right or wrong. They might be right to keep the secrets, but it does no less do harm in that relationship, because
in Doran's case, he's had some high-level plotting going on that would, lead to executions and lots of problems if it was discovered. He has felt that he couldn't tell Arianne because she was close to the Sand Snakes, and too many people might find out. And also, so he's had this whole thing, he's been one of the big grievances of Arianne is that he's presented her all these suitors over the years, and all of them have been very ancient and, from her perspective, very unsuitable. And he's basically been betting on her saying no to all of them, but he still had to pretend that he was trying to marry off because she's already betrothed.
Yeah. It's revealed,
or was anyway.
Was betrothed, because it was revealed by him that an agreement had been made in Braavos. But unfortunately, the boy was dead now. So, in fact, her brother Quentyn is not raising an army against her. He's sailed east to carry out the marriage that she was supposed to carry out. She was supposed to marry Viserys. They signed an agreement with Willem Dorry. Oberyn himself was there. And instead, they're hoping to send Quentyn to marry Daenerys and bring her west, to bring, their heart's desire, vengeance, justice, fire, and blood. A powerful ending.
Ending to a chapter ever.
That's a really powerful ending, I have to say.
Somehow they left that out of the show. This plan, I guess we can say that we don't think that was there from the get-go. I mean, he had Oberyn, and Oberyn was obviously an integral part in it, that, he'd been traveling to the Free Cities and could
he didn't have, I don't even know he had that much. He just had that he's the Red Viper.
Yeah.
I think all he had to begin with, as we pointed out when we were doing our Hedge Knight discussion, A Game of Thrones, that book, the majority of that book was written under the idea that it was part of a trilogy. Very brisk moving trilogy. And then towards the end of it, he said, well, it'll be 4 books. And it's only when he started on Clash of Kings that he said, no, I need to expand this. I need to stop. I need to kind of reconsider this. And it became the 6-book series. Now it's a 7-book series.
So some of the historical bits in particular, like the Blackfires.
Yeah, the Blackfires didn't exist in the Game of Thrones, which maybe colors that conversation that Varys and Illyrio were having. And I think George has repurposed it. Yeah. Right? And I think Dorne, I'm pretty sure he had the idea, well, obviously with Elia and so on, Dorne is going to side with Daenerys. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much it. The Red Viper is going to show up, flashy guy, leading an army for when Daenerys landed. And that was probably going to be the full extent of in that 4-book plan.
Yeah.
With the revision and the expansion of A Clash of Kings, that's when the Sand Snakes show up. And I think Eloria as well in the appendix. It's not before then. So I think that's the point where he said, okay, Dorne's rule's going to expand. How am I going to expand it? Okay, the Red Viper guy sounds interesting. Let's give him some bastard daughters.
Let's kill him off.
Yeah, but I think...
I wonder when he decided on that. And Tyrion's trial and... that whole development?
I think he always had the idea of Tyrion having. I mean, okay, if we want to go into that little leaked thing that wasn't supposed to be leaked, but
the
that
very
Harper
first ideas for
Tyrion was going to get blamed for murders and then split from his family and so on. So I think that's all was initial.
Yeah.
He wanted Tyrion to start on their side, to have a break with them, to come up against them.
Yeah, that's
so. But the full details, I think he didn't flesh out until Clash of Kings. I think so. It does show how, as he enriched the world and sort of enriched the story, certain players came forward. And there's not to say, like, we always have and this is a bit of a tangent, but people always, I wish George had just stuck to his 3-book plan, but, like, everyone absolutely adores the Storm of Swords, right? It's like the favorite for most people. And I think when you
wouldn't have had that much story to deal with if he was wrapping it up faster. And because he made that commitment to have all that story in A Storm of Swords, to have all those things happen, he obviously felt, and this is the reason, he was going to skip it forward, but he felt that you have to actually deal with the aftermath. And yes, I know that a lot of people, or at least some people, feel that the aftermath wasn't particularly interesting, or not as interesting anyway as what came before. Personally, I was always really dubious about the 5-year gap. I wanted to know what happened after A Storm of Swords. I wanted to see reactions to things. I wanted to, after such a momentous things happening, you need to sort of go downwards a little bit and settle things again. And I don't know. For me, it was the right decision without a doubt, and I think that. But a lot of people don't see the connection between having all those things happen and actually having to deal with the fallout.
Yeah. That covers the Future Crows. In Dorne and Dance with Dragons, we have the Watcher chapter from Mario Hota, and now that chapter, it's Dorne partly. Balance 1 has arrived. In A Feast for Crows, Cersei was sending him off with the alleged skull of Grey Clegane, and to do one thing more, she said. And what that is revealed is she wants Myrcella back. She wants him to insist that Myrcella has to return to King's Landing.
Of course, she doesn't know that Myrcella is at this moment lacking an ear and has a bit of a scar on her face, because we've got to mention that as part of when Arianne and her party encounter Areo, and they realize that they've been found out. The one unreliable part of her party, Gerald Dane, the Dark Star, her former lover, decides that he's not going to stick around to be captured, and he tries to actually kill, or I'm not sure if he's just trying to kill Myrcella. It's more like cause a diversion, basically, so he can get away.
I guess. I mean, he's definitely trying to kill her, but
but is it mostly to cause a diversion so he can get away, or does he have? Yeah, he's very unreliable. He's unpredictable enough that Oberyn thought he was a bad idea.
Yeah, he's the most.
Which is kind of saying an awful lot.
It is. I mean, when the most dangerous man in Dorne, and when Oberyn Martell says, you have to get rid of you because you're too much trouble. Yeah, it says a lot. So yes, if we're lucky solely because, if her horse hadn't shied away, and if he had more, he missed.
Yeah, no, he's not completely incompetent, as people have been trying to say. You are aiming at a target that wasn't moving, and then suddenly it moves unpredictably because she's sitting on an animal that has a very strong instinct to flee from dangerous things. That is unexpected, and if you've started aiming your sword, unexpected things happen.
No, I said, obviously, George had a particular effect he wanted. He wanted to remain not killed. It could have been Gregor, it could have been Jaime trying to do it, and the same result would have happened. So, but in any case, Gerald runs off. Her various friends are disposed of. One is married off to is it Eldon or is it Lord
Estermont?
Is it Eldon Estermont or is it Lord Estermont? I think it's Lord Estermont.
I think it's Lord Estermont, who's rather ancient. And,
and Garin gets it's Andrew Dalton gets sent off to Norvos to be part of Melario's guard. I forget what happens to Garin. Off to Essos as well, I think, wasn't it?
I think so.
And Gerald, on the other hand, has escaped to High Hermitage. So one of the things that happens is when Balin is there and all the Sand Snakes are there, there's talk of this, he wants to take Myrcella and Trystane. It's kind of complicated because there's a lot of various factors. This chapter actually has quite a lot of stuff.
That's, I think, why you get sort of the Aryo point of view. He's just watching and seeing all these things playing out, seeing how people are reacting to different things and what they're planning to do.
I mean, the important thing about the feast, for example, is, there's various lords there as well. And so Dorne proposes a toast to Tommen, and Aryo notes which lords drink to Tommen and which lords don't. And there are those lords who openly don't. And Obara, of course, pours out her glass and marches off angrily. And Aryo thinks again, Dorne is a divided, angry land. There's a lot of tension over what's going on. There are lords who support Dorne in his position, his apparent position, that they should not be rushing into the folly of war. There are other lords who want vengeance for what they feel is years of neglect and outrage, particularly towards the Martell family. Once the lords are gone, Dorne suggests to Balin, instead of that land route, why can't we go by sea? With it's a faster thing, and Balin's a little sweaty and nervous as well. The storms in the narrow sea, it'd be better to go over land. Okay, you're right. And that had a point. Dorne reveals that he has friends at court still, and they have revealed that Cersei had something else in mind than just bringing back Myrcella. She had arranged for her party to be attacked by men dressed up as clansmen, shouting half man, with the aim of tragically killing poor Prince Trystane to get Myrcella out of her betrothal. And Balin knows about it. He's not happy with it, but he's doing what he's told.
At least that's the most common speculation that we were thinking the other day.
That's a straightforward.
That's a straightforward one.
Because that's what Dorne actually said.
That's what Dorne says, yes. Yeah. But then again, can we entirely trust Dorne? Because he uses this to get the Sand Snakes on board with what he wants to do. Is it possible that he concocted this idea to more easily be able to steer them now that he starts proposing things that they're going to do? Would we explain then Balin's nervousness that he's actually concerned with the storms? Balin Swan is a somewhat decent Kingsguard.
Aryo Hotah think he'd be a good match. He's honorable, and he's an honorable knight. He's a genuine. He's worthy of the cloak. Jamie said so. He's definitely worthy of it.
So, would he go along with this murder plot if he knew about it?
I think he'd do his duty. I think the important part is this: would Cersei be capable?
Cersei is absolutely capable.
Because her paranoia in A Feast for Crows about Tyrion and everything he's touched, she has the High Septon murdered. The one that Tyrion appointed, she murders him.
Just because Tyrion appointed him.
Yeah, because Tyrion had a hand in his selection. So this marriage she hates. She thinks it's terrible. She thinks the Martells are basically in league with...
No, I think it's the most likely is that there is that one possibility that Doran is actually showing. He's shown himself before to be perfectly capable to hide things from people. And
obviously there's the other side. He is capable of hiding. But the other side of it is, then he has to predict correctly that Balin would be nervous about taking a trip by sea. I suppose he might know... what they don't know is that Balin Swan is, despite being a heroic knight, is kind of afraid of the open water and hates traveling by sea, gets seasick. Yeah. I think it's most straightforward to say it's true, but it's absolutely true. The Sand Snakes swear on their father's grave. That's what they care about. Better. They even tell him to his face that he was a better man than you. But he trusts it. Yeah. When they swear by Oberyn's bones, that's enough for him. They're his. And he gives them missions. Obara is going to accompany Balin Swan to deal with Gerald Dane, and we learn later that Aryo Hotah goes with them, which is interesting because obviously that kind of suggests that Aryo may be a point of view for what happens. Yeah, which is going to be fascinating, I think.
Don't think anything good is coming out of that one.
No, Nymeria and Tahini get what Nymeria wanted. They get to go to King's Landing, but they're going to go there as eyes and ears of Dorne.
Nymeria is taking the small council seat.
Yeah, she's going to claim the small council seat, and Tahini is supposed to become friendly with the Faith and the High Septon and so on. And obviously, Arianne says, why not send me to King's Landing? And he said, well, I need to keep you close, and there may be another task for you. And she realizes you've learned something. And what he's learned is a fleet of ships has left Volantis, has been seen coming towards Westeros. There's elephants on it. It's a military fleet. And is this Quentyn? Is this Quentyn of Daenerys?
Is there also a mention that he knows that the Golden Company has broken their contract?
Yeah, he's aware of the Golden Company as well. Is this them? And they don't know yet. Of course, what we know, what we readers know, is we see Quentyn. We see his journey. We see how adventure stinks. And we see poor Quentyn meeting his end. His end, sorry people who insist otherwise, Quentyn is dead and gone, sadly.
And for anyone who thinks that Quentyn's chapters, Dance with Dragons, were pointless, you should stay well away from me so we don't have a discussion about that in person. No, seriously, it upsets me so much. It's not just, I mean, one big part of it is George sort of upending the fairy tale prince, the frog prince, who turns out to, be a flambéed frog, really. And that's part of it. But he's not just doing that as a fun little exercise. I mean, they're really good chapters. They're well written. They're really touching. But also, that was an important point of A, the dragons are loose, and B, this is seriously going to affect what actually happens between Dorne and Daenerys. I don't know. I mean, what is going to happen? Are they going to think that this was on purpose from Daenerys? I mean, we do have Quentyn's companions who are alive for the time being. Are they going to report correctly that, well, yes, Daenerys turned him down. They can't really fault her hugely for that. She had already married. And then he tried to steal a dragon. Yeah. But are they going to report that correctly? Are they going to be alive to report that?
Are they even the ones who are going to report it first, that Quentyn is dead at the hands of a dragon?
Yeah, exactly.
Because what happens gosh, you know what? We should jump into the Winds of Winter material here, I think, because that really is going to explain a lot. The Winds of Winter has... Now, again, this is spoiler stuff. This is stuff that is...
So if you haven't read any of the spoiler chapters, you need to turn this video off and come back after the Winds of Winter is out. Yeah,
but okay, Winds of Winter. So what do we know of the situation? Well, Orianne is now on that mission that her father fought, which is to see who is on this fleet, who are these people, because they received a message. I actually decided to quote it verbatim from the excerpt. Bear in mind, I mean, until George publishes it between the pages of a book, or the covers of a book, it's not really set in stone, but this is what he had. To Prince Dorne of House Martell, you remember me, I pray. I knew your sister well, and was a leal servant of your good brother. I grieve for them as you do. I did not die, no more than did your sister's son. To save his life, we kept him hidden, but the time for hiding is done. A dragon has returned to Westeros to claim his birthright and seek vengeance for his father, and for the Princess Elia, his mother. In her name I turn to Dorne. Do not forsake us. John Connington, Lord of Griffin's Roost, hand of a true king. So Aegon is alive, or so we're told. And interestingly, Dorne is skeptical. He's not sure. This could be a false pretender. Even this person claiming to be John Connington, John Connington may not be John Connington.
I don't think he particularly knew John Connington very well himself, so he wouldn't really...
Casually at court, obviously he was...
How much he would actually trust him to...
So, but they're the ones who've landed. They're the ones who sees Griffin's Roost. I believe they sees Tarth as well. So he says...
They possibly Estermont, actually, which
Estermont
has a connection that Arianne's friend Silva was married to Lord Estermont and may potentially show up again.
Yeah.
I think so Estermont, not Tarth, actually. Tarth is...
people landed on Tarth, but maybe they didn't take it, or maybe they... I don't know.
There's a lot of rumors going around.
There's a lot of rumors.
People don't really know precisely what has happened.
Yeah. They move fast. The Golden Company are the best of the best in Essos, and they are moving quick. Partly because, as we saw at the end of Dance of Dragons, Aegon isn't happy to just sit at Griffin's Roost and wait. He's immediately on the attack to Storm's End. So Orianna and them go on, and she has a few companions, and you know, Daemon Sand, who was, you know, she gave her virginity to him, and he tried to marry her, but Dora said, you know, you're a bastard, you're not really suitable, and that's always left him a bit upset, and it's left him kind of soured on Orianna.
And it's
an interesting.
It's a really interesting choice, because if we look at the Watcher chapter from A Dance with Dragons, I believe he's one of the lords who does not drink to Tommen's health.
Yeah.
He was, you know, Oberyn's squire, or had been in the.
He had been his squire.
Yeah.
He's considered one of the best swords in Dorne. There are rumors that they had been lovers. Yeah. She said that she's never gone around to asking him.
Bit of an awkward conversation asking your ex. By the way, were you sleeping with my uncle too? My uncle that I had the hots for when I was younger. It could get really awkward in that family as well.
Yeah. Yes, it could. So
he's a curious choice.
He's a curious choice.
Partially, Doran chooses him because he's not going to be, you know, if he's still thinking that Arianne is going to seduce whoever he sends with her and get them to just do whatever she wants, he figures that's a safe bet that it's not going to happen with Daemon. On the other hand, he wants to know, you know, whether they should bet on this guy and go to war, or if they should be waiting. Daemon is somebody who clearly disapproves of the Lannisters very much and probably wants all of them dead. So is he a safe bet if it turns out that they shouldn't be betting on Aegon, if it isn't the actual Aegon? Is he going to do the right thing, or is he going to seize the chance that, well, here's a chance at, you know, striking at the Lannisters regardless of who this actually is?
Yeah, looking at the two chapters, I mean, the important thing that catches my eye, and I think that has led to the most discussion on the forums, has been Orianne and her perspective on all this, on this mission. She's very regretful about having sort of done this foolish plot. She thought she was like a child. She said now she's got to act like a real princess of Dorne. She has to succeed at this, and feeling the same pressure that Quentyn felt for Dance of Dragons.
No, it's true. They're very similar in.
The big difference, I think, from between, like, okay, if you read those A Feast for Crows chapter, like in particular you read the Queenmaker, she concocts and carries out this plot, but she's not super confident in her abilities to really do it. She's trying to convince herself. If you read between the lines, she's trying to convince herself, this is going to work, this is going to work, this is going to work. Now, after all of this, and now having been her father opening his plans to her, entrusting her, she suddenly, that lack of confidence, I think, shows through, because she questions everything. She's questioning everything all the time, all the details of her story, of what's happening. Like, you know, Daemon, what do you know of John Connington?
She's
what kind of man
churning
is
the
he?
information back and forth, trying to look at it in different ways, and trying to see what's the right decision on, and am I doing this for the right reasons? Like, he's casting doubts on, do you really want Quentyn back?
That's a big one. I think a lot of people focus on this. Her thoughts on Quentyn and Daenerys, because people basically there's two arguments. One argument is what she's doing is laying the groundwork for herself because of her pride and her desire for having been denied. Okay, she lived for years under the idea that her father didn't want her to be Princess of Dorne. Suddenly, she found out that she was supposed to become the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, married to Viserys, and now that's not happening. She is going to be Princess of Dorne, but it's her brother, the one who she thought was usurping her. He's going to end up the consort to the Queen. And so she's jealous, and she's trying to. So Daenerys, how does she let her brother be murdered? I hope. There's all these things where she's kind of questioning. Right, and people say, okay, well, this is laying the groundwork for her kind of jumping in and saying, I don't care whether Aegon is real or not, I want to be queen. I'm going to jump for it. My view is again, and I think the one that really gives it away for me is that conversation with Daemon. We're at, I guess there's still Ghost Hill, and she thinks to herself, I think he asked her, like, do you want this to be Daenerys of Quentyn? Or do you want this to actually be Aegon? I mean, what do you actually want? And she says, well, I can speak freely with him. She thinks to herself, and then she says, I'd rather it was Quentyn with Daenerys. Oh, really? He says. And to me she's telling herself, not him, herself, I can speak honestly.
Yeah.
And what I feel is I'd like Quentyn to be back. I don't want him to be hurt. I want him to have Daenerys.
Which kind of makes me think that if that is really the way we should take it, and I think you make a good point here, then Dorne has made a big mistake in sending Daemon with her, because his questioning is making her question things again, like, am I right to think this? Or because then she starts wondering, is it about, is it Daenerys saying, she's the Mad King's daughter, can we trust her? And I think that is going to be the angle once they learn that Quentyn is dead. That is going to feed all that paranoia about Daenerys being the Mad King's daughter, and now she's gone and killed Quentyn.
Yeah, if they get a garble report that Quentyn died and was eaten or burned alive by a dragon,
that's it. That's it. I mean, it's clear that I think we may see some of the fighting between Aegon and Daenerys actually happening in Dorne, if we're to believe. What's the youngest girl's name? Is it
Sorella?
No.
Elio.
The Toland.
Toland. Oh yes, the Toland girl. I forget her name actually. Sorry.
But she has dragon dreams, and she says that I've seen the dragons, and wherever they were fighting, people died. Or maybe it's just sort of she's mentioning it now because she's seeing Arianne, and perhaps it connects more to her than. But the fact that she is starting to wonder about, is Daenerys
Tiora.
Yeah.
Younger daughter, the red-haired younger daughter who has dragon dreams.
Yes. How she ended up with those?
Well, I mean,
probably, there was a marriage between Martell and Targaryen, so maybe an intermarriage then.
Or another route is via Casella Vaif's bastards, perhaps.
Yeah.
I forget what happened to them.
We don't actually know for sure.
George, I think at one point they were supposed to be given, or was it Mary Maize that went to a set? But
they went to a set.
At some point George had some notes, and then I think he changed it, so I don't remember.
Yeah.
That's the tough part about seeing sort of versions of things. We kind of
Which one ended up being the final version? Yes.
Actually, I guess I could do a quick look at the.
I actually don't think it is stated clearly in the final.
World of Westfire.
Because we would have dealt with that on the game in that case.
Oh, you're right.
And we haven't had to deal with that on our game.
No.
So I think it was left up in the air what happened to Casella's bastards, and even how many they were, perhaps. But anyway. There's, dragons will probably again prove bad news to Dorne, and it's probably going to have a lot to do with that they are going to mistakenly assume that Daenerys is not to be trusted.
I think so. So, I mean, that's the political situation as we have it at the end of those two chapters. We have, obviously, the other thing that ends up, and it's relevant to Dorne, they're told in the second chapter, they've already seen Storm's End.
Yeah.
An army is coming down from King's Landing. That's almost certainly led by Randall Tarley.
And you used to think that Aegon might possibly have died in the seizing of Storm's End because of his rashness, or being seriously injured because they haven't met him yet. Seems less likely, I think.
It feels less likely now to me. I thought it would have been an interesting turn, but I think I didn't foresee quite the direction of the story. I think I have a better sense of it now.
Yeah.
But the rashness continues because he's not planning to stop and fight in Storm's End. He's not going to be a siege; it's going to be a battle. We're pretty sure, but he's going to go out to meet this army.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is an army that is. This is Kevin is dead at the end of A Dance with Dragons. Marcel is dead, so it's Mace Tyrell calling the shots, pretty much.
And Tarly is obviously a very capable commander,
but does he have enough resources? Does he have enough men? Are they being overconfident, or it's lots of questions. I mean, we're talking about the political situation as we can kind of understand it, and we have a sense of where it's going because it does feel like Arianne is going to throw her Dorne's lot in with this Aegon, even though Daenerys maybe around, maybe showing up as well.
Yeah.
And we don't know
And
what
obviously
complications.
we don't know the whole with the dragons fighting, whether there's going to be any literal dragons or just I mean, obviously they are dragons, in the dragon dreams that can just mean Targaryens or Blackfires or what have you.
A Mummer's dragon versus a real dragon. Yeah.
Exactly. I don't think that Aegon is going to end up with one of the dragons, for example. I'm very dubious that he is. He is able to get a hold of one. Then yeah, maybe.
There's a lot of questions.
There's
and
a lot
it
of questions
makes the Winds of Winter really interesting. I mean, what's going to happen over on the other side of Dorne with High Hermitage and
But
Gerald
it's quite clear
Dane?
that Dorne is going to play a central part in the end game.
Certainly a central part. End game is
the Ice and Fire end game is a different, but the
fight over the Iron Throne.
But the fight over the Iron Throne when Daenerys first lands and what sort of who are going to be her potential allies in Westeros. As that we think that the original idea was Dorne was going to be her allies ready for her. Now that may not be the case, and then she needs a base in the Seven Kingdoms, though. She needs some foothold. So is she gonna get the North instead?
Even if they're not allied with her directly, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll immediately be hostile. It'll be very confusing, so we don't quite know what'll happen. It'll be interesting to see. But so that is, I think, a good sense of the political situation. Dorne is a bit divided, a bit confused. Dorne's leading the way with trying to keep the ear to the ground, trying to decide this invasion, is this the one we've been waiting for? Is this the one we're going to bank on? Arianne is questioning everything. She doesn't know what to think, and she's trying to figure her way out to do the right thing. But she may make the wrong choice for the wrong reasons. She may make the wrong choice for the right reasons. It may simply be, well, Quentin's dead. She may realize this guy is fake, but Quentin's dead, and there's no sign of Daenerys coming. It's now or never. Let's go for it. It's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out, I think.
Yeah, no, it's one of the big things that I'm wondering about for them, and it's one of the things that's definitely not going to be spoiled by the books or by the show, not in any way.
I mean, this is obviously a bit delayed. This was supposed to be done last week, but
we had a dog show this weekend and various other things. We had a site to make sure it kept running and all these things at the start. So we're kind of playing catch up from the first week, and I'm doing all the work on producing material for the episodes. Yeah. So I haven't really been in any shape to sit and do a video.
Yeah. So I mean, the next video, and I hope we'll be able to record it in a couple of days or have it out by Friday or something, is for, I guess, relates to the second episode. And that one, I think you suggested we do a video kind of looking at sort of the war.
The Ice and Fire to some extent, but not the dragons, rather. No. Melisandre and the Great Other, the R'hllor and the Great Other.
And sort of the origins of a conflict. I mean, I have some thoughts about R'hllor in particular, and also, and also, we've always said we wanted to do a video about the others, their origins, so we'll kind of combine it together to try and
lots of speculating there to do.
Yeah. So, until then, hopefully just a few days, good luck, have fun.